Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, bonjour, bonsoir, good morgen, guten morgen, buongiorno, buenos dias, and g'day mate. So I'm Eaon Pritchard in Melbourne, Australia, bringing you the first of these international webinars that we're going to be hosting, looking at very much the topic of the day, which is remote working and the implications of that. So I'm going to start with a quote, and so this is from a fella called Dror Poleg. He's co-founder of the Real Estate Innovation Institute in New York and author of Rethinking Real Estate, which is a best-selling book looking at the future of sort of workplaces and cities and all those kind of things. Anyway, Poleg says this. He says, the office of the future is not a place. The office of the future is a network that enables employees to access whatever they need to access right now in order to produce their best possible work. So there's two things to kind of pick out of that statement. First one is the office of the future. Now, I think the office of the future has arrived quite suddenly, right? This is because the future really is here now. So I think, even Poleg might have been thinking there might be a sort of, 5 years that we're thinking about, how this is going to evolve. But it's right here, right now. And the other thing he says is whatever they need to access right now. Now, what exactly that is one of the things we're going to attempt to uncover in the next hour or so, right? Because it's not just about communications, and it's certainly not about taking the same rules of the workplace we knew and then placing them into the new environment with a new layer of technology. It goes deeper than that. So that's what we're going to look at. Looking at the future of work and remote working, we are actually facing an environmental and cultural pressure, right? Which means that adapting to that pressure is going to be crucial. People who, or businesses, organizations that don't adapt, I think need to be worried about their future. So it's that serious. Anyway, I'm now going to introduce the team who are going to talk to you today. First up is Eric Hooftman. Eric is one of the foremost leadership and management coaches in Europe. Eric's the MD of the CinQ Strategic Teams Academy, who are bringing you this presentation. He's the one who drives the esports-based training component of the organization, so you hear about that. He also runs his own B2B consulting firm called Roots and Shoots, and he has a background in applying these skills in academic publishing at Elsevier. Just a note, we have two Erics presenting today, so henceforth during this presentation, the first Eric shall be known as Flying. Eric is Dutch, Flying Dutchman. Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay, so and Flying is joining us from the Netherlands today. Next up is the second Eric. So that's Eric Lowry. He's in Paris. Eric's the co-founder of Disruptive Learning Solutions, and he's the sort of technology brains behind the operation. Eric is the second Eric and shall be known as Red, right? Eric the Red. I don't know where this one comes from. I'm thinking it might be something to do with Eric Cantona, who was French, played for Manchester United. Probably got wrong with that, but never mind. So that's Red. Next up is Matthew Heidsieck, who's Director of Development with our strategic partners, Expert Team Digital Learning and Moby Teach. So also in France, Matthew has over 20 years digital learning and collaboration experience. He's the only Matthew, so we don't have to make up a name for him. And then also Toby Coop. So Toby is president of Disruptive Learning Solutions. So I've known Toby for over 10 years. He has a long history of innovation in the collaborative learning and coaching space, particularly with 3D technology, virtual worlds, going way back. So Toby is also in Paris. Also joining us, it will be Philippe from the Lowland Lions esports team. So they both sort of signed up as partners just in the last week. So we'll be hearing from them a little bit later on. So
just to add in there, Eaon, but we also have another representative from Lowland Lions there with Donny, who is the main coach. And now, not all, it's a lot of dudes this morning. Okay.
Sorry, and apologies to Donny. Yeah, he's there as well. He's here in the studio. He's just not in my script. But there you go. Okay, so that's the team. They're going to take. I'm just going to do a little bit of a setup for the session, right? So there's kind of 6 key questions that that the team are going to address. First of all, will office life return to normal after COVID? There's a lot of talk of the new normal, whatever that is. I think it's certainly going to change. So the answer to that one is definitely no. And then we'll go through the challenges of working as a remote team, the skills gap. So that's what new skills or new learning needs to happen to thrive in that environment. And then once you've made it, how do we scale it and roll that out into right through the organization? And then sort of lastly, looking at what we can learn from video games and esports to apply in that space. So that's the setup for the day. Just as an intro, I'm just going to sort of build a little bit on the comments about whether office life is going to return to normal. The interesting thing is that the office that we've been used to over the last 20 or 30 years, is that really an optimal work environment anyway? And I think we'd look at that and say, not really, right? It's something that's a kind of it's almost like it's a hangover from the industrial revolution way of working, right? Which was people went to a factory for 10 hours a day and then went home. And so, there is a sense that if we just move the slide on, actually, but yeah, working from home. So big, the big organizations like Google, Microsoft, Facebook in the US, and then people like Hitachi and Toshiba in Japan, and then even, just local. So these are local organizations where I live outside Melbourne, right? If you try and deal with the water board now, everyone there is working from home indefinitely, right? Even though in kind of instances of COVID here in Victoria and Australia, we're actually doing quite well compared to the rest of the world. We haven't had any new cases for about a month, but there's still no plans for these kind of office type workers to go back permanently to the office. And even in America, they're talking about September next year before they even think about it. Right. So, what we talk about the traditional office is it's a good example of what's called an evolutionary mismatch. Right. It's where the environment has changed to the point that it doesn't, that human nature is no longer or the mental mechanisms that we have are no longer suited to the environment. We'll just move that along. This just illustrates that trend of working of moving to remote working. So in the space of a year, from 2019 to 2020, the attitudes towards remote working from senior managers in American industry has almost completely flipped, right? With nearly half of respondents saying that they anticipate working from home or outside of the office pretty much all of the time, right? So that's that shows you how quickly attitudes have changed in just over a year. So yeah, so the conventional way we think about the office is a mismatch, really. And so this sort of period that we're going through, we can almost see it as almost like a reset, you know, and a chance to actually, you know, to take some positives from it, to actually change the way we work, to be more in line with human nature, right? Because these types of offices, which will be familiar, I'm sure, to, you know, people watching this, of cubicles and sort of, you know, grey walls and everything, that, you know, those weren't designed by psychologists, but thinking about creating an environment where people could thrive, right? It was designed by engineers or facility managers. So there's a chance to reset the workplace, and we can look to learnings from human psychology to help us understand what a workplace in tune with nature looks like, right? And you know, we're creatures that evolved to go about our business, you know, in the sunlight, surrounded by greenery, being able to sleep whenever we like. You know, sleeping 8 hours a night is a relatively modern phenomenon, again, a relic from the Industrial Revolution. Physical movement, right? We've become a sedentary species, you know, that hardly move about. Having social interaction with other humans, children and animals, right? These are really important things for human well-being. Doesn't happen much in the traditional office. So in many respects, the home office is a far better workplace because of access to all of these things. The only thing that's missing is that social interaction, you know, with other people that we're working with, right? Now, why would that be such a big important thing? Again, looking at human nature, right? This is the fundamental motives framework. Basically, any human behavior can be tracked back to either one of or a combination of these fundamental motives, right? And the big one is forming alliances and friendships, right? We're a social species. It's very, very important to be able to do that. And the way you do that is, you know, is with actually, you know, doing things together in the same place with people, which has become very difficult in the current situation. But just moving on, look at how that might, how that might happen, right? Why is it important to have to form alliances and relationships? Well, you know, this is our you know, in our communities, you know, we build reciprocity, right? I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Very, very important for building trust, and then gaining credibility with your other, you know, workers or people around you. That's how reputations are built, and we're a reputational species, right? So these are the challenges. Interestingly, as well, this the COVID situation has thrown up a sort of paradox, you know, because you know, as a species, again, we tend to seek safety in numbers and seek social contact when we're exposed to threats. But of course, this threat, you know, is is one that would actually make it even more dangerous if we do that. So, we all know about physical distancing and things like that. So finding some sort of solution where, to actually be able to bring people together, to do that kind of teamwork, and to be able to build trust, reciprocity, and all of that becomes very, very important now in this remote working situation. So just sort of finally, looking at communication. So there's an idea in psychology that the effectiveness of communication directly correlates with how natural the communication is. And so facial expressions, body language, and speech, they are big three elements of natural communication. Now we've got electronic technologies that can deal with that, such as the one that we're actually using to give this presentation, right? You can see everyone's faces. But what we can't replicate so easy on video conferencing is this idea of co-location, right? Myself and flying may have the same prison cell in our background, but we are not in the same prison cell, unfortunately, so, or maybe fortunately. But with a degree of co-location, synchronicity, be able to do things in time with other people, right, and to engage in communication, interaction, and actually do tasks together, right? So these are just as important as being able to see face-to-face. So finally, last thing, the sort of catchphrase for this is you can trust someone when you can see what makes them sweat, right? But that's a sort of metaphor for, this is actually doing things together in groups with people. That's how reputations are formed, and that's how we understand the strengths and weaknesses of people that we're working with. So, I'm going to posit that if we can solve that, if we can simulate that, then perhaps the networked office, right, is not a compromise at all. It's actually an improvement, right? It becomes an adaptation, right? So things that can adapt to environmental pressures and new environmental changes, that's the things that thrive and survive. So it's not a compromise. Anyway, I shall now hand over to Flying, who's going to kick us off with a point of view on what he sees as the challenges of working as remote and distributed teams. So over to Flying.
Thanks, Eaon, for laying this out, because this is a real, as you expressed so vividly, it's a new situation that lots of challenges for teams and companies and individuals step in as working remotely and distributed. So let me dive into this a bit further and to explore together, because you talked basically when you entered on your final slide on trust, and you see, when you work together with people, you can see each other's sweat almost. That enables that mutual bond. What is not disappearing in this COVID crisis, and probably here to stay, is businesses OKRs. All businesses will still remain loyal to their shareholders, and vice versa, in maintaining their objectives and key results. They will be still in place. And we all know already, without COVID, it is a continuous challenge and to maintain organizational safety in itself. So self-trust, team trust, and organizational trust are bonded in a 3D reality to create engagement. Because engagement, as we all know, is sort of the final indicator for performance in a 3D reality, where fueled by our mutual face-to-face and physical presence. Of course, lots of companies already started a couple of years ago with more online work, but still there was a sort of normal and healthy mix. So that mix is now vastly under pressure, and this 2D reality needs not only more experience on working online, but it needs a growth mindset more than ever. And there, in that growth mindset, that attribute of dare to make mistakes and fail forward fast, we need that mindset even more. And of course, for this to happen, you need to have trust, not only self-trust, team trust, but organizational trust as well. So in order to visit and revisit the engagement and energy needed behind the screen, working together remotely is crucial. And that sums it up for leadership as well, because it's an enormous leadership challenge to still lead the organization, or teams lead themselves. So for leadership, you need more teachership than ever. And we all know that there are only effective teachers and leaders if you have effective followers who trust you. So in talking to this dynamic and the challenges of working as remote and in distributed teams as well, let us explore this a bit further, because what this distributed mean, it's not only working remotely, but it's distributed. It means as well that we work from different geographies and different locations, and that implies that we need to grasp and cultivate our similarities in our different cultures. So for everybody working together with different cultures, the instant reflex could be, oh, we need to deal with stupid people who are not subscribing to my culture, to the French culture, or to the Dutch culture, or to the English culture, or to the down under culture, etc. So that is a challenge in itself. So it's merely the challenge to discover that working in such a distributed setup needs to dive into similarities even more, and embrace the differences as well. And that is a challenge in itself. But being remote doesn't help, because remote works leads to button impatience, as we would call it in our team. Button impatience is to be described as work remote requires proficiency and even mastery to master online workflow tools like Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Zooms, Google Docs, and work simultaneously on WhatsApp or any other messaging platform. And even when we deal with contracts, to deal with DocuSigns to have signatures transferred over online as well, next to voice-to-voice communication as well, simultaneously sometimes. So that is a skill in itself, to deal with that remote setting, and that causes stress as well when some people in the team are just not mastering it yet. And it requires a different sort of patience levels as well. And that is the link to basically our consulting solutions to your challenges when we talk about the Strategic Team Academy on the coaching side and in the CinQ gaming solution side. Because the challenge is to stay emotional at the high ground together as a team, as an organization, and of course as an individual as well in your companies. So, and of course the emotion that is carried within the challenge of the game solutions and the consultancy preparatory work, and it addresses the needs of us being social animals to be in a safe environment to test and quest and be better at remote teaming and distributed teaming as well. So using both our EQs, emotional intelligence quotients, but as well our social and collaborative intelligence levels to raise them together, of course, with communication mastery to support the above. And we defined, and Toby will come back to that in a minute or so, the big four of these traits. And we need to have strategy and visioning and skills to communicating and to collaborate, and to have a need for a common modus operandi on problem solving and feedbacking in an online situation. needless to say, the executional part is as important as in real life too, to get work done. All this in an organizational setup, often dominated by power. And we all know that in Greek mythology, power is male, and we need much more diversity here as well in a safe environment. We need wisdom as well as a female attribute. We're using lots of power and not much wisdom yet in getting this on a sustainable level with our teams and organizations. So bringing this further to Toby to explore the skills gap that there is definitely for working in remote and distributed teams. I hand it to you, Toby.
Thank you very much, Matt. Just when we do a chat, everybody can hear me. Put your hand up. Yeah, my mic is working. Yeah, it's working. I think one of the things to actually, set the scene in when we talk about the pressure that people are undergoing now is that there are really, two ways that we can look at this. One of them is that it's task orientated. It's very simply what we're just moving. I listened to some senior directors and vice presidents talk about, okay, we've just now moved our strategy from being in the office to now digital, infrastructure's in way. We're hitting the targets, or on the way to hitting targets. Bob's your uncle, that's really good. It escapes the blind spot that we have, that we're living through one of the biggest global pandemics ever in the history of mankind. And at the same time, we're also going through a business revolution, digital side, which, just depending on which flavor of consultancy business that you decide to choose or your quote from KPMG to McKinsey, etc. But we're basically compressing 10 to 15 years worth of digital revolution into 3 months. The shock of that is massive. On top of the pandemic, just one by itself is hard. The two of them together. So there's an emotional crisis taking place across the globe. And I think it's important to understand that while this was the nice to have positioning document before COVID, which was moving from a hierarchical command and control business to a self-managed, a team which is able to use technology to enable itself to work relatively on it, or relatively on its own to achieve its targets, is it is something that all organizations have been moving towards, but instead of being a nice to have, it's a must have now, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think that it leads to it's behoven on people like us who are in the coaching industry or learning and development industry to help organizations to understand the stages that they're going through in terms of learning to adapt. I think that Eaon talked about that the key challenge for us as organizations, as teams, is how we adapt. And the positioning of the way that Flying's talking about, what's taking place within us at that time, what's happening at the grassroots level within a team, etc. And the skills necessary to do that. It means here, what we're actually facing is a movement from conscious incompetence to conscious competence. That's in the learning to learn cycle, which I'm sure quite a lot of people in the audience are very familiar with. But what we've actually put it on here is we've run around the side is the actual stages of how a team forms. And what is surfaced at the conscious incompetence side, negative emotions, right? Donny Stumple later on is going to talk about what he perceives as one of the benefits of working with CinQ is that it works at an emotional level. And it creates a sense of presence of team, and it generates that. So what we would see as the skills gap within this here is that what we used to call hard skills and soft skills is now being repositioned as hard. This is the expert skills, the skills very necessary for you to do the job, and the soft skills, which we call, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, which is, not very macho. It's been renamed and being driven from the US as power skills. And being a black belt in power skills is something that is a pre-requirement for working in this environment now. And I think would be one of the key contributors for teams and organizations to adapt to the changes that are taking place. We'll talk about this diagram a little later on within the context of the training in the game that we talk about. But to use a slide that we've adapted from Deloitte, I did our piece on here, you can actually see that in terms of the shift management thinking here, organizations have been using this idea of contrasting, but for quite a while actually, that organizational performance is a sport, right? A team sport, in fact. But actually what we're saying is it's an e-sport, that it takes place within a network, that it takes place within a virtual environment. And so there, when we look at the graph that we're looking at here, it's the movement from physical-based office, people traveling to the office, communities being organized around the office within a city, typically within the city, to now hybrid teams. I think that Eaon's made the case in terms of how organizations are adapting now, that many of the cities that we've had HQs, or in French, siège social, the big headquarters, are now being spread out. And they're not just being spread outside of the city that they've necessarily lived in, they're being spread out, distributed across the globe. Because one of the things that people can take advantage and gain more access to better living quarters, better places to live, is that because you're working on a network, you can really access the office and be anywhere in the globe. So here, when we talk about the mission and purpose, whereas it's sustainability and employees and leaders, here it's about survival. It's really that you have to take the team, and the team is the basic unit of survival, and you have to regenerate the energy, and you have to learn to leverage the power of that remote team. And we can see companies, Twitter has gone fully remote, or told employees who can do that, are able to do that, and they're driving what we call hybrid organizations. I think in our team, we may have not got it right in terms of the wording here, but one of the things that we see that when we put it into context with regards to the crisis that we're living through, that here we see teams and team leaders as revolutionaries. All right. And so at this point, what we've decided to do is that I'm going to hand over to Flying.
So this leads this paradigm shift in management thinking. Leads to also to operationalize that, let's say, high level picture as well. So how can you build, scale, and train remote and distributed teams to keep on hitting their targets faster? Because that target, the OKRs of objectives and key results, every organization needs to hit post-COVID, in COVID, for the next future in this new reality, needs different power skills as well. So using, and we spent quite some time in the past years developing that, because using the power of video games, and especially team-based esports, in tandem with coaching tools and techniques, we bring together a purpose-built virtual testing ground with certified coaches as well. So a safe virtual testing ground, which feels real. And before we dive into how CinQ works and how it will help to elevate your teams to the new level, here's a short trailer to give you a fast taste, a first taste, and also a fast taste of the game. As you have seen and shown in this brief overview, CinQ is a video game built to train a team of 5 players in a high-level teamwork environment where teamwork and skills and practices are shown and experienced. So to achieve this, we built the entire game around the 4 key power skills, which are both the focus of the game's team's challenges and the key metrics used to measure a team's skills level and their progress as they train with CinQ. And those 4 power skills are having a strategy and a vision formulated in the mission work of the team, teamwork and communication, evaluation and problem solving skills, and the ability to execute and literally perform the planned tasks. So Red, I hand it to you to dive further into the roles.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to show all of this and how it functions might be to break the game down for you. So let's actually start with the first step of the game, which is the role selection. So the 5 team members, before they actually start the mission, will have to pick one of 5 team roles. And I'll actually show you this in a short video. This step is actually quite crucial in the learning process because it puts each participant in a situation similar to what can be found in the workplace, where they each have different skills, different assets, and different knowledge to bring to the table. So by actually having them pick a given role and sort of get invested in that role, and then from session to session having them switch roles, that gives them a sort of experience of what it can be like to step into a colleague's shoes and see things from a different perspective.
Can I build on that, Red? What you're talking about?
For sure.
When we were working on a workshop with a big insurance company, and we were doing this as a conference room setting with the game. I think we had about 30-40 people overall there, which was a good cross section of this company we worked with for 2.5 years. What happened when we did the wash up at the end? Well, one of the significant things that took place was we had people from legal, people from accounts, people from sales, people from other areas. And what came up was their feelings, and we were quite surprised because we didn't see that happening there ourselves, but they talked about cross-functional work. And they said they suddenly began to see the real, because each of the 5 characters are quite different and carry different sets of skills, but support each other collectively in solving the problem. So one of the things with this idea, which we now see writ large in the network office, is the requirement that cross-functional skills are sort of paramount in what they're doing, and having the 5 players do that is a great teaching and a great value, I think.
Exactly the point of sort of having this step where they have to pick a different role. I'll let Flying take over and sort of explain the next step in the process. Right.
Yeah, because when you make the comparison with business life further, it's often when new projects or teams are formed and with roles tied to the organizational framework or competence framework, then the team is formed. In that process, then planning and briefing starts, as we all know in our companies. And now that the team has been assembled, they all end up inside of sort of the kickoff meeting in a project team live in organizations. In the game, that's the van. and where they receive mission orders from top management, and they must prepare an action plan using various types of intelligence information about the target. And here's what this part looks like. This is a quick overview of the briefing process, because in this phase, as we all know, this phase will teach teams how to follow an iterative planning process. And the idea is to learn how to effectively share information and set up a smart test, a plan of action, a smart test plan of action possible without going in too much detail or spending hours and hours of planning session. Smart, but with a bias for action. We have quite a few teams that spend over an hour inside the van discussing again strategies and getting nowhere. Probably can recall all sorts of project or teams planning meetings where you end up with a feeling of frustration in the daily life. So this is the aim, is in a safe environment, but very real, failing fast incites deep learning. And by making teams fail early and often, the game is built around iterative planning. And you cannot account for everything. Like in daily life, even after hours of planning, teams will fail when they reach the first obstacles. They will then start right off.
So yeah, I'm actually going to very quickly sort of take us through that basically the process you go through once you exit the van. So I'm going to present that now and sort of explain what's happening on screen as we go through the first few challenges of the mission, right? So here we have the different team members out behind a building, which you can see on the left of the screen. And they're walking towards their objective, which is to get into that building. And inside the van, we actually have the planner, who has sort of this overview and is there to help guide the team through the entire process. So he can see them walking around, he can help direct them and help them find the way to their closest objective. So the first challenge that we're going to have here is sort of a coordination challenge, where the hacker here has to hack the CCTV cameras to make sure that when they enter the building, they don't get caught by the cameras and sort of, basically trigger the alarm and fail the mission. But while he's doing that, there are two other main things that have to happen. Someone has to actually crack the code for the back door to be able to get into the building. So they have to get that timed properly, because if you open the door too early, you lose, because you'll have triggered the alarm. But if you don't go and actually find that code in time, as we'll see in just a second, there's actually drones coming around the building that will catch you. And so here we have another team member, the acrobat, who's actually basically playing lookout and making sure that that drone doesn't reach the other team members before they're ready to have the alarms disabled, or the cameras, and enter the building. So then when they enter the building, there's a very important point here. If you see the grid on the ground there, that is a motion detector. And only the engineer, who's in blue here, who we're following, can see this. And so this becomes a communication challenge where that engineer will have to communicate that to other people. We've seen it many times where the engineer sees it, walks through, doesn't tell anyone, and someone runs through the motion detector and triggers it and raises the alarm. So in parallel with this, once that's done, we actually have the acrobat who has their next objective, which is to enter the ventilation system through the roof. And to do that, they have to get to the roof and into the ventilation, which we'll see just on the left. But the planner had to first check the camera on the roof, now that he has access to them, to make sure that the drone wouldn't be there to catch the acrobat when they reach the roof. Same thing here inside the main lobby. So the planner just looked at the camera inside the main building's sort of ground floor and tried to make sure that the drone wasn't in a position that would be a problem for the rest of the team. Now those team members know that they can enter that area safely to reach their objective, which in this case is to grab some key cards to be able to freely move around the building and actually get past doors that have locks on them. So there are two team members going through this and grabbing key cards, right? And as we're going to see in a second, there's actually a bit of a challenge here, an extra challenge, which is that the technician here has special goggles that allows him to see lasers. So if he doesn't come here and inform the rest of the team that the lasers are there, they might be tempted to just walk through this security gate. Instead, what they should do is actually jump over this fence, as you just saw. So again, proper communication and making sure that everyone has all the right information is incredibly important. We switched over here to the acrobat in the ventilation shaft. And so what's really important here is that as the other team members are walking around the lobby and sharing information and trying to get to their objective, we actually have the acrobat communicating with the planner here, while the planner guides the acrobat through what's essentially a maze. So for those two conversations to happen in parallel over a single communication channel, that requires some very, very effective communication strategies and coordination within the team. Otherwise, you'll end up with something we've seen many, many times when we were testing this with teams and when teams are training within CinQ, which is a situation where people will just talk over each other and sort of not properly communicate or collaborate, and they'll just fail because for some reason someone didn't have the opportunity to share crucial information at the right moment in time. And so this is sort of the crux of how the solution works, right? You end up with a situation where you've got a series of challenges that are not necessarily difficult from a sort of game manipulation point of view or from like a speed point of view. It's mostly about creating situations that will have teams fail for lack of communication, collaboration, proper planning. Go ahead.
So just building on that point that you just said, that one of the things that the game is designed for is it's not designed for gamers, so to speak, who have tremendous skills either with a controller or a mouse and keyboard. You know, what it's designed for is to test your collaboration and your communication skills. It nevertheless requires some basic moments. And in fact, the game also has simplified controls. So for people who've never played the game before, the game is easy. And for those that have played the game, it's easy too. All right? What's not easy, which is the movement, what's not easy is actually solving it as a team. And I just wanted to, building on what Flying and Eric were talking about, because we're getting into a good flow here, was Flying talked about it and you talked about it, but is what we call failing forward. And this is such a hard thing to get used to, what we call, I mean, our two colleagues here, Donny and Philip, know this very well, that a team goes again, makes a mistake, relearns, adapt, goes again, makes step, relearns, which is exactly what Eaon was talking about, that the way that we successfully adapt to crisis in different situations is we have to learn to find different ways to solve the problems. You know, if you keep doing the same thing, hope that it gets you a different solution, it's just not going to happen. And there's no more than a games world would teach you that, where you're playing from Dark Souls to Overwatch or League of Legends. You're going to, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to lose. and the numbers tell you at the end whether you've done.
Building on this, Toby, because by making teams fail early and often, the game is built around this iterative planning process. You cannot account for everything, as said earlier. So they will start right back inside the van again and enter an iterative planning process again to learn from the past experience. They're failing fast, and when they set up a new rough plan, test it and adapt it to the next try, and then rinse and repeat. And so this is leading us to that execution of and learning to learn circle.
Johnny? Yeah, when we were talking about that, and for Philip as well, when we were talking about iterative training, does that ring a bell for you guys? That's, when we're talking about that from an esport point of view, that going back, failing, relearning, coming back in the competition scene, that's what you guys live and breathe, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It's every day. It's like practicing over and over, doing the same rehearsals, but trying to adapt for the perfect optimal situation. So yeah, you have to adapt constantly to achieve the goal that you want, and that's winning the game, basically. And for a corporate environment, it's like getting the results that you want to. And by getting those results, you have to try all these things that is the most efficient with the right people in the right place. And this kind of learning really propels that environment and mindset and all these things forward to get to those results faster, for sure.
Building on your comment here, from a pedagogical and technical point of view, CinQ has been designed with live coaching in mind as we play. So when a coach connects to CinQ alongside the team, they will get a dedicated set of tools, which gives them an overview of the entire team's actions, right, and let them look through the eyes of individual players as they are playing. And I think that might be interesting as well when you are a coach yourself, indeed, Donnie, to build on your coaching skills mastery to the next level as well, to create a new league. Yeah, and building on this, here's a short example of how this system works in the game. Picking this up from this coaching perspective, it's also about the scoring, because coaching is also about getting to the next level together with the team. So following the logic, then this is as well where the Strategic Coaching Academy comes in, with the expert coaches trained at using CinQ to help teams identify and close their skills gap in the most effective way possible. And to explore a bit more on the scoring, I hand it to you, Red.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the key elements of CinQ, the technology, is that we've actually built in a scoring system based on those 4 key skills, power skills we talked about earlier. And so we actually have this system we use for scoring teams that uses, as Toby's showing on the slide here, that uses a scorecard. And so we actually took this system and went and built it straight into the game, so that after each session, teams can actually go through and self-evaluate both the team's performance and also individual performance to figure out who was the MVP in each try.
Just one second, Red, just before you put in there. I think one of the things that for the coaches on here to look at this is that this scorecard is not exact. This scorecard can be adapted to different environments and to different people depending on variables. Typically, when we work with a client, this scorecard we don't present straight away. We use this scorecard to help them elaborate what the core principles are that they're working towards. These principles, like for example, with Donny and Philip's team, might be slightly different. Strategy and vision is not necessarily some of the key aspects that are built in a League of Legends team. Certainly setting directions and goal setting is, all right, what is it, all right, which leads to motivation in terms of where we're looking at here. But the important thing is that you're able to make the qualitative objective. This is the whole idea. So that each of these elements here has to be some sort of behaviorable, observable action. It's not I think it's like this, or we think it like that it's like that. You get many instances, even in the game, and even when it's videoed, when you see, as a coach, I'm sure Donny and Eric, you've had this where you say to somebody, but this happened, so have you thought about it? And the person says, no, that didn't happen. And you're taken back in shock. It's like, no, but it did. I saw it. And no, until you show them. In many ways, that's the purpose of the skills matrix. It is likely when people start, they're at level 1 to 2, but their objective for the next 3 weeks is to try and get 3 to 4. That identifies the skills gap. Between where they're at, where they want to go, you're building an action plan with them. And the difference in building the action plan is the team has to own the action plan. It's not a process of you telling them what to do. It's a process of them owning and going through the learning processes. We're talking about the team learning process and the learn to learn process. And that's what the coaches work with the teams to do, so that they own where they're at, where they're going to, and the result. And generally, it works very, very well, and is a very useful tool. We've used this many, many times. And this is a result of what we've built in co-creation with clients. It's not something that we've just built from the top and applied. You can see that we've actually worked on the principles of 360 feedback, but within the game, as the players are going through the 2 types of scorecard, you're actually working with the coach at the same time, and it's the coach that is the driving impetus for bringing these changes about. This is if you could just pause and back one there, Eric.
Yep.
All right, for the scorecard. This is something here, if you can pause it. This is something that we've worked with our colleague Matthew. We're going to talk with later on about LMS systems and being able to have a scorecard or a dashboard where both individuals and teams are able to aggregate their learning and their development and where they're actually at in the game, both from a serious point of view and from a fun point of view.
So yeah, on that subject, maybe just before we get into the more LMS and sort of larger scale side of things, if you could just put on the next slide, I'll just very briefly explain sort of the basics behind the technology that drives CinQ. So the CinQ is a standalone application built using the Unity 3D engine, which is one of the major game engines used to build video games and actually quite a bit of other types of software. And so what this allows us to do is easily make it available on different platforms. So currently it's available on Windows 10, and we're in early access on both macOS and Android at the moment. It's quite easy for us to just port it from one platform to another without it having sort of any issues. And one last point about that, even though it is a 3D video game that uses multiplayer, etc. It's built in a very lightweight fashion to run on most corporate type computers, so low powered machines without dedicated graphics cards, etc. So it's really designed to work quite easily in a business environment. So actually, coming back to what you were saying, Toby, I'll let Mathieu take over and sort of explain our strategy for growing this to a larger scale and what we do with an LMS system, right?
Well, thank you, Red. So if you're watching this event as a company, you're certainly deploying learning and training through a platform. And at Expert Team, as an editor in this field, we're in the business of facilitating and scaling up blended learning worldwide. We try to articulate this and have the mission to develop learning organizations. So the development of a growth mindset is also part of it. And so it includes skills management and a learning culture. So at this stage, I have to confess that when Toby Coop, the DLS CEO, contacted me for partnership about esport, I was totally illiterate in this field. Even though my son was already an adept, I felt that esport was more of an oxymoron, contradiction in terms. So far from understanding the potential for the professional world. Then I understood the link that Toby was making between skills management, our core business, and the building of power skills in CinQ. And I saw the obvious link with what we are trying to develop at Expert Team, which is to help managers animate the skills of their teams through field coaching. We've already been pioneering field coaching development because we understand it is only through recurrent and coach practice that you really build and polish your skills in business situations. And I would say, as a hockey player, I saw the power of CinQ in building agile and truly connected teams. And I understand the level that you reach on power skills has never been so key to our success. So this partnership value became obvious, and the Expert Team platform became the first ever to carry esport with teamwork training. And we're very proud of that. So the platform gives you access to players and coaches, providing individual and team dashboards. And you have two business contexts that you may face. It can be a project platform for an event or a limited period of time, a small group, or it can be a corporate platform with CinQ Esport as an additional modality of your blended learning platform. Yeah, so we try to combine polarities, for maximum efficiency, and doing good job is combining poles. So serious and emotional is really something very interesting to introduce in the digital learning world. Serious, of course, but also we look for that will develop the field of energy to bring out the continuous team player and learner. So in my experience, now that esport brings emotion and skills that moves really your culture forward. Also the digital and human part, we see in our industry a sole focus on having an autonomous learner, and that's not enough. We've done great things as an industry for that, but really we think it is key to combine this with a human focus, leveraging on the trainer, but also the managers in the learning culture. That's really key to the organizational success today. And if you change as a manager, you create a mirror response to what you are and what you do. The CinQ and async aspect, well, sorry for the barbaric terms, but async is self-learning and CinQ, synchronous, is live learning, may it be online or presential. And we really need powerful live training more than ever. This is where we just won a gold award in the States last week. Individual and team-based, well, team-based is a breakthrough, including CinQ with this new focus on team-based. Skill building is a major switch, and train the team as teams. Well, it's really something different to do in such an environment and remote environments. Maybe, well, there is this global issue deployment. We have customers that have thousands of workers around the globe, and sometimes it can be up to 15,000 managers that need to grow and to grow with their teams and to grow with various cultures. So there is this global and local adaptation, which is important. But we also have the process and the tools needed to align rapidly the approach to your brand leadership style and your local culture. So that's key to carry this at scale.
Well, I think it's, before we got at something you and I were talking about was, okay, so we now know that we can achieve scale with technology, right? But one of the things that you and I were talking about was the ability to achieve scale using train-to-trainer or coach-to-coach programs. So one of the things that we'd worked on was this, and it's something that's in the DNA of coaching is, if you want to train 300 managers, you have 10 coaches. You don't go and get 300 coaches to train 300 managers. What's integral to this process is that it's not that you remain the expert, delivering courses continuously, living forever with the client. The idea is that you have intervention with the client and you are leaving them with the skills as an asset within their organization, right? So that you're actually, people may say, your job is to do yourself out of a job. And the way that you go about doing that is that you are selecting in the first group of people that you start to train the best, the people that are considered the leaders within the organization, the people that the peers look to, who are the cultural trendsetters or cultural people who can influence the norms and values that's taking around. And we as a team collectively trained the first 10, the first 20. And we get them using our certification process that we've borrowed from Six Sigma, of training them from white belt to black belt. We then take a step back as we use the trainers, the coaches that we've trained, who then train their colleagues. And we stand back and manage the architecture of that and the project management. I think that's one of the key things, because I think this is a really a great slide, an improvement on some of the slides where you train 5, those 5 train 10, etc. But and it seems to be that most of the companies we're working with or talking with understand that principle as well. Sorry, Matthew.
Yeah, we're working with Leroy Merlin, and in January, Leroy Merlin is deploying a digital passport skill set to 23,000 people, and we deploy it through 1,200 managers. So it's live training. So it goes, scaling this way. It's blitzkrieg, and it's very interactive. And this is what we'll do together to deploy.
I think that I think it's people get that you can train a team of 5, but how do you tame teams of 300? And I think we have a pretty good response with that in doing that. So one of the areas of research that's taken place over the years was, and one significant milestone with that was when IBM employed synchronicity to go and do research in what was the emerging online games of World of Warcraft, EVE Online, and other what we call massive multiplayer online games. One of the key things that came out within this, so here's virtual world real leadership, and you can get these on the internet just by putting the tags in, or you can ask us for them. But one of the key trends that came out from this research was that the behaviors that the researchers saw And one of the key messages was the behaviors you're beginning to see in the online games are exactly what leadership and teamwork is going to look like in 3 to 5 years. You know, the key competencies of collaboration, of teamwork, of communication, of try and fail, iterative learning, in the context of instant messaging, website forums, etc., set the scene that the video games community is something that we can see where best practice lies for the business community. The esport and the video games community has been living this for 20 years, and they've mastered this in ways that the new remote and distributed office workers and office teams have no idea how to do that, except probably if they play games or they come from a guild or they come from a games area. What two exciting announcements to make is that we are partnering with Whoop, with Tom and his team, and we're going to be working with Thomas to set up an esport corporate league for the next year, for 21. We're going to be making announcements in January on to do this, and we'll be doing some live streaming of some top teams playing and giving people a real hands-on feel to what the game does to a team and how you can work with a team on that. Thomas and his team are really excited about that, and there'll be more on that later. We'd also like to talk about Lowland Lines and a partnership that we're working with Donny and Philip. I'd like to welcome you guys on board. Donny and I have known each other for quite a while, but we can't put a fix on about 18 months or something when we were talking about the early versions of CinQ and testing it with him, because he's at the cold face of esports. And suddenly, as this COVID lockdowns went across Europe, he contacted me with his colleague and director, Philip, discuss a partnership in which we work with him and his teams to focus on using CinQ as a way of generating an emotional connection and a mirror to look at team bonding, team esprit de corps, team collaboration, etc. So Philip is the CEO of Lowland Lines, and he's a business consultant and esports entrepreneur. And he has been, he's been around the game for a long time, coming out. It's a very deep understanding it. Donny is the CEO of Next Level Esports. Donny works at the coalface with teams directly in their skills and selecting them. Thank you for coming, guys, and thank you for helping build this partnership. I'm going to start off and say to Philip, we're going to be working with you in the new year with CinQ and with the esport teams, and we're going to be working with your teams, and you're going to be working with us. What excites you about this? What made you think CinQ now as you look forward in terms of approaching the new year?
Well, thank you for having us, Toby. As you know, as an esports team or as a competitive gaming team, we have a lot of technical skills. People have to know the game very well, but the games that we play, League of Legends and Counter-Strike, are team-based teams. And so we have to grade our teams. And as there are 2 seasons in a year, each 6 months, we have to create a team from scratch. Adding to that we have a lot of international players that we can't see face-to-face. On top of that, the COVID, a tool like CinQ would help us a lot to create teams rapidly and in a more structural way than that we used to do. Donny used to have people face-to-face and start creating a team as a group physically. Right now we cannot do it. So CinQ will be a great addition to our set of tools of creating the teams that we want.
Thank you. Donny, you're at the coalface in working with the teams, and as you said, the uninitiated is a Counter-Strike and League of Legends are top team playing games, and they require you've got to be good to playing this. So what's important about CinQ for you, Donny? You had an interesting take on it when we talked about this before.
Yeah. So what my take is, and the thing is about like these power skills and all the interpersonal skills that you want in a team. Doesn't matter if you're a corporate, an esports team, or at a football team or a hockey club. It doesn't really matter, because it's about people. And even though we all know people are different, each individual is unique, but we share a lot of same mechanics, like inside our brains. And one of the things that really that CinQ helps with is really seeing a person for who it really is. Why is that? So when you look at the gaming industry or the gaming world, or if you play a game, you get drawn into the game. You are in that environment. Compared to workshops, it's like a set environment for maybe like 1 hour or 4 hours, and they have like the physical aspect as well. That's good. But it can be like tweaked or engineered, or you feel like, oh, I'm not feeling well today. Then you'll be more detached or more engaged compared to the other team members. CinQ brings the opportunity to do this over and over again in the same environment, just with ease behind your computer. And the thing is that if you are inside this game, you are spontaneous if you're drawn into the game. And if you are spontaneous, it is really important for your natural behavior. When people are spontaneous, they forget about their environment that they're in and just be themselves. You get to see their true colors, because inside the game, if you just like I think Eric Flying already mentioned it, people communicating very loudly, and other Eric as well, you get interference in the communication to really be effective at it. And if you're spontaneous, you really see the true colors of a personality who is more quiet or more in the front of leadership, or doing the things that they always do in the real life environment. And CinQ provides a way to really coach the person on it, because it's like structured and a safe environment that lets the people be spontaneous in the moment. And that creates an opportunity for everyone to learn, because it's in the same environment. If you have a workshop, you need a coach and all these things. It costs also quite a bit of money as well. And after 4 hours, well, you go back to your office, inspirational, and you take it away with 1 week or 2 weeks. And what happens after those 2 weeks, after the workshop or after the training? You go back to your old habits often. Well, not everyone, but those are some tendencies. And if you can repeat a game in the same safe environment over and over again, you can really dig down into what makes the team efficient in the communication, because it's not about like the results inside the work, or for us in an esports team about winning this particular game in this particular type of context that changes over and over, but it's a same type of context that you really can develop your skills. And that really what makes CinQ stand out compared to other types of approaches to develop these skills. That is really valuable for us as esports teams to develop it for selection as well, but also like investing into the people that you have to build the best framework for your team to succeed in. So that is one thing. And compared to that, when I'm also working with teams and environment and looking for ways to develop players, I always bring like the metaphor of watching 1,000 karate movies. And then you say, what has watching 1,000 karate movies has to do with esports or anything or development in the first place? Let me ask you this. How many would you be able to do karate after 1,000 watching 1,000 karate movies? Just think about it for 1 second. I don't think you'll be able to be a black belt in karate, maybe not even after 10,000 or 1 million movies. It's about execution. It's about rehearsal. It's about doing it. And CinQ gives the perfect opportunity to rehearse that, to not only watch it for like a training perspective or reading a book, to if you don't use it, you lose it. And CinQ really hones into the power skills and interpersonal skills to keep practicing it and using it. So you don't really have to know what you got to do, but you actually have to apply it over and over again. And if you would like use CinQ every 1 hour a week, or maybe once each set of frequent time, it will hone your skills and develop you as an individual further together with your team. So that's really valuable about CinQ, and why I like to use CinQ as an esports development coach, to use all these tools available.
That's a really deep and profound analysis when we're doing that, and we're really grateful for you saying it like that, but also for the insights in it as well.
Yeah, you're
I
welcome.
think no, but it's great, and Philippe, I can see why you choose him.
Not that many like Donny, so
There isn't, is there? I think that in announcing the two things, one with Whoop and with Lone and Lions, one of the things is that we're looking forward to is bringing a new set of associated services where we were talking with a large organization called Esports Bar that brings lots of the personalities together within the esports world together. And we're talking to them about having an HR learning track and esports. And that was 18 months ago we were talking with them. And I think here we're living it. You know, we're right at that intersection where the community of people who've been almost in a parallel world, developing tools and rules for survival within a virtual environment, and that is a competitive environment, which, just to set the scene, the esports world is bigger than Wood. And the audiences that watch these games are biggest on the planet for watching any sport at any time, anywhere. They comprise not just a physical audience within an arena, but the numbers that are watching online are just astronomical. You know, so I think for us, seeing the significance of this partnership and bringing this together, that for the corporate learning and development marketplace, we offer something that can help solve problems. And importantly, bringing it back to Ian's point of view, we can help you adapt quicker, more efficiently, and we work on the effective side. We work on the emotional side as well as on the instrumental side. Both are important, but right now the emotional side is probably one of the most important things in terms of team bonding, etc. With this in mind, what I'd like to do is hand back to Red.
So yeah, for anyone who's actually interested in sort of getting in contact with us and giving CinQ a try and sort of getting a bit of hands-on experience with all that we've been talking about, it's really quite simple. Just go to the website playcinq.com, and you'll see sort of a listing of what we offer there, and you can just sign up. We'll get in contact with you and try to figure out exactly what you need and find the best solution that works for you.
You know, everybody says that in a good presentation you have a call to action. I think the call to action here is please contact us if you're interested in learning about what we do. I think that I'd like to hand back to Eaon now, who fronted this whole piece with. Well, I mean, I learned from when my interaction with Eaon about his view of how we as organizations, we as teams, we as communities need to reappraise how we're thinking about adapting. And I'd like to end with Eaon.
Sure, thanks. Well, so here's, I thought just to sort of to wrap up, I'll give a little summary of sort of the notes that I've taken. So I think that's you know, just some of the sort of the key points that have come up. So under the topics that we started with, so will office life return to normal after COVID? I think we're saying, well, we hope not. because we want something that's better than normal. And definitely, what we've spoken about today definitely contributes to that better situation. I think it's taken the opportunity of sort of change that's been forced upon us. I think, as I said in the beginning, to make a sort of adaptive change. This will be a moment that sorts out which companies are going to go forward and thrive, and which ones will, have to sort of not fall by the wayside. But I mean, I work in advertising, so we worry about brands like this all the time. There's far too many brands in too many categories. There's going to have to be an event that clears some of them out. And so, maybe the same thing, Mame's thing is coming here, that businesses that adapt will survive. Anyway, so Flying talked to us about the challenges of working in remote and distributed teams. In my mind, I kind of sorted it out. I thought there's two types of challenges, really. There are the technical challenges, right? And then there are the adaptive challenges. So I think in sort of business theory, they say that technical challenges usually have known fixes that just need to be applied, but adaptive challenges require new behaviors and new learning, right? So, and I think, with CinQ, we've got a combination of both those things, of the technical and the adaptive. In terms of the skills gap needed to solve that, so I think Toby said that we've crammed, about 10 years of digital change into the last 6 months. So that is quite a dramatic change all at once. And the solution, to that is shifting from traditional command and control systems, ways of working, to self-managed teams. This is something that has been talked about, for the last few years, but it's about to become much more of a reality. So the building and scaling. So the key things that I picked up that I think are important is this the power skills idea, which I must admit was a new term to me, but I can see the logic. So power skills in agile teams and network learning, combined with the train the trainer idea, and that's how this can roll out on the big scale. And then fascinating little piece at the end there from the world of esports and video games. I think Toby and the guys said, esports is becoming as a spectator event, is bigger than many real world or in the flesh sports. Also, just video games in general as a cultural thing is bigger than movies, bigger than pop music. I think, I guess an interesting point that I would add to that is from a behavior change standpoint. One of the things we talk about is, the best way to get people to adopt new behaviors is to attach the behaviors to something they already do, right? So, if you want people to do push-ups in the morning, then you frame it as brush your teeth and then do 10 push-ups. Right? So you attach it to something you already do. So, because video gaming is just, it's not just kids, it's all through different demographics, everyone's playing. It's the biggest cultural thing since the Beatles or whatever. So, getting people to adopt the behaviors they do in leisure time into their working day, I would say we have a good chance of because it's so familiar. So yeah, that was absolutely fascinating stuff. So just thanks to everyone that joined in.
I would like to say, as a final note, I'd like to say thank you very much to Eaon Pritchard. We've actually known each other longer than 10 years. He just didn't want to announce that. As we reached a certain young age, yeah. And
just after 10, it's just, it's like how they say some cultures only have numbers for 1, 2, and many.
I'm entering that zone. I want to say, because this guy, I want to say thank you to Matthew. We have a customer as Leroy Merlin, and they've purchased in CinQ, and we have a great year ahead of us in bringing our joint solutions out there to potential customers and scaling up with that. Thank you very much for Eric for having the patience to handle the technical side of things and to keep us all in zen. Particular thanks to Flying, who's the head of our coaching academy. And it's always good to see that he and Eaon Pritchard are in the same jail together, but in different locations. A great thanks to Philippe and Donny for really being good chaps and moving very quick with us. We are, I just want to put it, we're very excited. I see so much coming from this, and you can see just in the conversations around us, the direction that the marketplace is going in terms of where we see esport and HR and learning. I'd like to say thank you very much for those that have attended and those that are here. Catch you in the new year with new shows, new activities, and new events. Thank you very much.